Hi, welcome to Growing and Sharing Community History, a presentation for the Pennsylvania State Archives Community History Dialogue Series. My name is Caitlin Oiye Coon, and I am the Archives Director at Densho. I'm excited to spend the next 20 or so minutes introducing you to my organization and what we do. So first, I am going to give you a little background on the history of Densho. We are a cultural heritage organization based out of Seattle, Washington. Our founding goes back to about 1996, when members of the Japanese American community in Seattle decided that they wanted to preserve the stories of the World War II incarceration of Japanese Americans. Our mission hasn't changed much over the years. You can see it here. We continue to preserve and share the history of the World War II incarceration of Japanese Americans to promote equity and justice today. Our founding executive director and some of the board members were retired Microsoft employees, and this ended up hugely impacting the direction the organization went in the beginning. So instead of developing a traditional museum or archives, they decided that digital was the future. And so from the very beginning, our focus was on digital access to these stories. And now we have over 1,000 oral histories and about 100,000 digitized primary sources like photographs, documents, newspapers, letters, etc. And these are all available through our online Densho digital repository. So I'm not sure how much you know about the incarceration, but I just wanted to kind of lay out some of the major events in the history, just to give you some additional background. In response to the bombing of Pearl Harbor, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066 on February 19th of 1942. This allowed for the removal of all Japanese Americans from the West Coast. And as a result, about 120,000 Japanese Americans were forced into assembly centers and incarceration camps. These were open from about May of 42 until the last one closed in March of 46. Many Japanese Americans returned to their hometowns after the war, but many also chose to relocate further east. And so the community kind of spread out across the country. In the 1970s, the redress movement sought to correct the wrongs done to the community. And this culminated in the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, where President Ronald Reagan, signed the formal apology to Japanese Americans, and they gave reparations to all the survivors. Of course, this leaves out a lot of nuance and a lot of facts about the incarceration and the history leading up to it and beyond. If you want to learn more, again, you can always look to Densho and some of the resources I will show you next. So oral histories are the foundation of our work. And I thought I could show you just a very short, like minute-long clip that gives you an idea of what they look like. This is Frank Yamasaki. He was interviewed in '97 here near Seattle, Washington. And he is talking about conditions in camp.
Very dusty. Dust was how do we find? They were fiery colors about 3-4 inches deep. So you just every time you take a step, they just have a puff of smoke. I mean, of dust. And if you have even the slightest breeze, wow, you know, you're in a like a fog. And when you go to the missile to eat, of course you can when you chew the food, you can feel the grit of the sand, and it's amazing. Even that you get used to it. Gradually, I got used to the mixture of sand and food.
So yeah, that's Frank talking about how sandy conditions were. And we have so many oral histories that talk about these types of things. So next, I thought I would go over 4 of the major resources that Densho offers. The Densho Digital Repository, you will hear me call it the DDR often throughout the rest of this presentation. Densho Encyclopedia, Sites of Shame, and the Names Registry. And I am going to start with the Densho Digital Repository. It is really just the kind of the core of Densho and all of our work. It houses all of our oral histories and primary source materials. And I should mention the DDR and all of these resources are freely available online, and there's no registration, so you can just go to the websites, look around, see what's going on without any sort of impediment to using it. And in the DDR, we make almost everything downloadable, and when possible, we try and put things under Creative Commons license. Our mission is really to allow users to explore these primary source materials, and in doing so, learn about issues of civil rights and social justice and equality. So our audience is the community, but it's also artists and writers, students, teachers, scholars, and many journalists. And they can go to the Densho Digital Repository, download content to study and reuse in their own works. And we have had a lot of just anecdotal experience that it's been really helpful in across the spectrum in terms of people who use it. Next is the Densho Encyclopedia. And this was a project to have sort of a wiki-based encyclopedia that was online. There's over 1,000 articles, I believe, and they all cover Japanese American history with a bent towards the incarceration. They were all written and reviewed by scholars and other subject matter experts. So we pride ourselves on accuracy, and there's such a range of topics, you can kind of get lost in it because everything is linked in there, and you can start with one article and then link to the next. So here you can see this is Manzanar, but there's different links to Owens Valley and WCCA and WRA, etc. And then the content is often linked to oral histories and other historical materials that can be found in the DDR. So it gives you a richer experience in terms of reading about it and then going in and hearing about it or seeing photos and things like that. And I really encourage anyone interested in learning more to just kind of check it out and get lost in it and see what new things you can find. Next is Sites of Shame. This is our newest launch, and it actually replaces an older version of this map, but it is a map of the incarceration, and it really helps to visualize the stories and the geography behind all of it. So this here is what it looks like just on the main page. And you can see all of these little dots. These are all incarceration facilities during World War II. So it goes beyond the assembly centers and main 10 camps. It has Department of Justice, internment camps, all sorts of things. And you can find information about the population size and other facts about each camp. And then there are also ways to visualize movements in and out of camps or movements of families. So this photograph here on the right on the top is the kind of green and yellow are where people were from when they went to the camp. This is Heart Mountain here. And then the blue is where people went as they left. So you can see all of the West Coast here and then the spread really across the rest of the country when people left. And then this here on the bottom is an example. We've taken about 6 families at this point and mapped their histories. And so this shows you the different people within the family and where they went before the war and then after the war. So that is Sites of Shame. And the last one I'm going to talk about is the Names Registry. So this is a project that is continually in development. Right now, you can search for one of the 120,000 incarcerated Japanese Americans through the Names Registry. We link data from a few wartime data sets. So the Form 26, which was the intake form that everyone had to fill out going into the camps, and the final accountability roster, which is the exit form as people left. So you can see from these screenshots how somebody might search for a person, and then you can pull up the information about that person. This happens to me, my grandmother. Over here on the right, you can see other potential family members that you can link to. And it's nice to have all of this information available in one spot. We are hoping to release a new version of the names registry soon. In this case, there will be linkages between not just these data sets, but with any other content in the digital repository. So if my grandmother showed up in any photographs or oral histories, or even like camp newsletters, things like that, we would be able to pull up her page and then see a list of all of those areas she was in the DDR. So it's very exciting, and we are hoping to launch that very soon. So those are the four main tools and resources that Densho has. And so now I want to talk a little bit about some of our current outreach and education initiatives. We do a lot, so I've just kind of picked some of our larger highlighted ones. Three main areas I'm going to touch on. First is the Densho Catalyst and our social media, then the Artist in Residence program, and finally some collaborations that we've been working on. And first of all, we have the Densho Catalyst, History, Essays, and Opinions. So this used to be our blog, and we have slightly redesigned it, but it contains essays that are usually written by Densho staff members, but we also get guest writers. We have had interns write blogs in the past, and even volunteers. Anybody who has, an interesting point of view or something that they want to write about. And there's just the range of topics is really broad. And this is our most current ones. So in conversation, artist and author Katie Yamasaki, she recently did a book talk. And so we did a blog about that we hosted. And yeah, there's so much great information in the Catalyst. I definitely recommend going in to look at that. Kind of along the same lines, Densho social media. We've had a social media presence for a long time, but it's really ramped up in the last 5 to 7 years when we were able to hire communication staff who really, they do a lot in terms of time and effort in curating great posts. So the example I have here is our Instagram page. And I'm personally an Instagram person, so I tend to go to this before anything else. But here's an example of one of our fun series. This is an ongoing series called Ask a Historian. Brian Nia is our content director, and he answers questions about very obscure parts of the Japanese American incarceration. And we call him our walking encyclopedia. So he really does seemingly know everything. So yeah, that's our social media. We're also on Facebook and Twitter, the usual. But social media has really helped with engagement with our audiences. So moving on to talk about our Artist in Residence program. I believe we've been doing this since about 2018, and every year we select 2 artists for a year-long residency program. They receive a stipend and they produce a piece of art for Densho using the content in our digital repository oftentimes. And I've selected here, you can see Lauren Ida and Molly Murakami. These were our 2 artists in residence from 2021. So on the left is Lauren Ida. She is an artist who often uses paper as a form of expression. And so what she did for us was create a memory net, which you can see some of the pieces that were part of the net. So it's actually a hanging art piece that goes across our ceiling, and it's a net. And then she created these cutouts, which are representations of objects that were meaningful to survivors of the incarceration or descendants of the survivors. And so she built these into the net, and it is currently in our office, and it's really nice to walk in there and see it. And we had a live streaming event when she was cutting and installing it. And then the one on the right, this is Molly Murakami. She's a comics illustrator. And for her project, she wrote and illustrated a graphic novel. It's titled Tide Goes Out, and it's about the Japanese Americans who were living on Terminal Island in California when EO 9066 was announced. It's really great. We did get some versions printed, but there is a free full digital edition available on our website, densho.org. So I highly recommend going in and taking a look at that as well. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about collaborations. I have a few here, but we often partner with creators who want to explore the history of the incarceration and its ongoing relevance in society today. These are three of kind of our more recent ones. First, I'll talk about, we partnered with TED-Ed currently on 3 videos. They're listed here. We've got the model minority myth, history of American xenophobia, and the Aki Kurose story, which kind of tells a story of the incarceration through the eyes of Aki. We worked with really great artists and helped come up with the content. And these are really great ways to kind of, I think they're between like 5 and 7 minutes long, but they're really great. And you can watch them from the Densho website, or if you go onto the TED-Ed website, you can search for Densho and they will come up there. And with this partnership, we've been able to expand the audience that actually sees these videos beyond like Densho's just core audience. Next is Kampu. Kampu is Densho's first podcast, and we partnered with Hannah and Noah Mariyama. They're brother and sister, and they did a really great job. Hannah came up with the idea to tell the story of the incarceration through objects. So there are 6 episodes, and they're all object-based. So you have an episode on rocks, paper, latrines, so how latrines affected the lives of incarcerees. And again, as usual, these are all available on our website, but you can also access Kampu through any of the normal podcast apps. And then another example of how we often work with authors is This is Facing the Mountain by Daniel James Brown. You probably know him better as the author of Boys in the Boat, which came out quite a few years ago now, but he was actually at an event that our executive director was speaking at, and he saw some of our oral history clips from the Nisei soldiers who served during World War II, and that inspired him to write this book where he follows the stories of, I believe it's 5 Nisei soldiers, and he worked closely with us, and we helped get him in contact with the families, and he watched all of the oral histories and all of that. So those are just 3 ways that we have collaborated with other either artists or organizations to help get the story out and help people kind of think about the incarceration and how it affects us today and the repercussions even as we're going along in current times. So I want to thank you for watching the video. If anything, there are just 2 main things that I wanted to share about Densho here, our work and our organization. One is that I truly believe community-based archives are essential to preserving the stories of underrepresented and underserved communities. So these communities can take control of their own stories. They can go out there, they can record oral histories, they can help preserve the primary source documents, but then they can also reuse those materials in ways to educate the public. So that's one. And then the other is that there are many powerful ways to use primary sources and oral histories. They don't have to be static, boring pieces of history. You can use them and you can create partnerships and collaborations to make digital materials accessible and just engage with your audiences in new and exciting ways. So again, thank you for watching. I hope I've enticed you to go onto our websites and look around. If you go to www.densho.org, you can get to all of the content that I have shown you throughout the presentation. And again, follow us on social media. Our tag is @Densho Project, and you can keep up to date with what we do. And then I look forward to seeing you later in February for our live Q&A session. Thank you very much.